I mean, if you look at the horses,
Yes.
yes, I mean, some of the horses, they are so stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, if you got the most expensive cars out there today,
Yeah.
yes, and if you on a side by side, if there was a beautiful, let's say, a sports car or some kind of a Range Rover or a Land Rover, and you had a horse next to it,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think 9 out of 10
The horse
people
will stand out.
would just look at the horse because
Yeah.
sometimes they're so beautiful and they're such
Yeah.
graceful
Graceful, yes.
creatures. So starting off from where we left off,
Yes.
it's very interesting to see, right from the start of the Quran or Surah Baqarah. If we just look at the number of verses, so there are 3 verses in the beginning which explain, who the believers are.
Yeah.
And then there are just 2 verses about the disbelievers.
Okay.
And then there are 13 verses about hypocrites. And we did, our last videos was on avoiding hypocrisy.
Okay.
So this just gives you a very interesting sense of, why is it so important to avoid hypocrisy? So, so after talking about, the believers, the disbelievers, and then about the hypocrite, it says, He created you and the people before you.
Yes.
And then Allah says that He made the earth almost like, let's say, a bed or a place where, you can live your lives comfortably.
Yes.
And He made the skies like a roof.
Yes.
Right? And, then He goes on to say that, He sends
like
down water and,
It's like a
it sort of,
big home for us.
it's a big home for us. You're right. It's a pretty big home for us.
Yeah.
So, and now we know from a scientific perspective that, these verses are so insightful because, we're just sitting here and having a conversation and, we just, a lot of people, they're just walking or sleeping or driving or whatever. And we feel as if the earth is completely static. And now we know
Yes.
that the earth is revolving and rotating,
Yes.
At such high speeds.
And moving through space.
And moving through space.
Yes.
And it's not just that, and then our galaxies is moving through space and
Yes.
and our solar system, obviously.
Yes.
God has made it in a way which is so comfortable for us, right? So we go to sleep at night, we get up in the morning and, we go to work without even thinking for a second that, we're living on a planet which is moving at such high speeds.
Yes.
Yes, without getting that sensation.
Yes.
So that is one part of it.
Yes.
And then, of course, the fact that, this world has been made so comfortable, there's a number of different verses in the Quran, is because, the earth is just right in terms of it's not too hard, it's not too soft.
Yeah.
So it allows us to, do plantations and have fields where we can grow the crops.
Yeah.
Yes. And it, it allows us to have roads and, build our tarmac and so it's a very interesting, it's a very comprehensively fitting place.
Yeah.
Which feels that, it has been created specifically for us.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you look at the skies,
Yeah.
There's so many meteors, there's so many flying objects in space,
Yes.
which could easily wreck, large parts of planet Earth.
Yes.
At frequent intervals, but that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Yes. So similarly, there's harmful rays of the sun, which are protected by the different layers that we have.
The ozone layer. Yeah.
The ozone layer, exactly.
Yeah.
We begin to see that our Earth, as soon as we move out away from the Earth,
Yes.
is such a beautiful blue planet.
Yes.
And it's a blue planet because of the water.
Yes.
70% of it is water.
Yes.
And this is when we begin to understand, when we look at the other planets and we look at planet Earth, that is where, the blue planet comes in. It's such a beautiful, remarkable thing which is full of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is when you begin to understand that this has been designed, ground up.
Yeah.
For life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what God is referring to when He says, He created it for you, and He created, the sky as a roof.
Yes.
and he sent down water, and
Yes.
we have plantation that we do from it, and all those kind of things.
Yes. No, I think it's really interesting that the purpose of the world and the skies is that they have been created for us, and the animals and the trees and everything. So I think it's really interesting, and I think we can learn a lot from animals. Like, for example, we use them for traveling and for eating and so on. But we can also learn by their patterns. For example, as you can see, the first example that we discussed, that a crow came and he buried his another crow to show, how the process of burial is done. And similarly, I think we can see how a spider, makes a web and waits for the prey to come to it. So it creates an environment, to hunt for its prey rather than going after its prey, which would be, the typical thinking of for us, I guess,
Of the marketing guys.
of the marketing guys.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we can learn a lot from all of these different things, that have been created around us for us. So I think to have this piece of information that everything has been created for us really helps us to uh, possibly incorporate these different ideas in our lives.
No, absolutely. And since you mentioned about animals, that's not our discussion right now. There are another few verses which hopefully we'll study at another time. But
Yeah.
there are verses in the Quran which talk exactly about the fact that there is a lot of science for people in the animals that God has created.
Yes.
And because we get our milk from them, and our food and all of those things,
Yes.
and they contribute to the ecosystem.
Yes.
But interestingly, there's also, with some animals, there's an element of beauty and glamour.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, if you look at the horses,
Yes.
I mean, some of the horses, they are so stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
If you got the most expensive cars out there today,
Yeah.
yes, and if you on a side by side, if there was a beautiful, let's say, a sports car, or some kind of a Range Rover or a Land Rover, and you had a horse next to it,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think 9 to 10
The horse
people
will stand out.
would just look at the horse, because
Yeah.
sometimes
Absolutely.
they're so beautiful, and they're such graceful
Graceful.
creatures.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So the creation of God is phenomenal. But yeah, coming back to the so it talks about the fact that because God has created all these things,
Yeah.
so therefore it just makes sense that we worship Him, and we get the guidance and wisdom from Him.
Yeah. Absolutely.